Hey up hobbyists, we're back with another basic terrain making tutorial. This time we are working on some dungeon tiles. I've got some corners, I've got some walls, and I've got some basic filler pieces like this, floor tiles. So yeah, during this video we'll show you how to make the walls and the floor. The rest is up to the imagination. So what you will need to get started is your basic XPS foam. You'll also need your basic equipment. So we've got craft knives, ruler, in our case steel ruler, and a pencil. Carpenter's square is a bonus, just makes things a little bit easier. You don't actually need this for making these tiles. First job, measure up how big we want the tiles to be. So for the first two tiles I do for this video, it's a basic 4" by 4" square, and then for the wall tile it is a 4" by 2" rectangle. Once these are all measured out, we then cut them out. Seems simple, but yeah, measure up, cut them out with the craft knife. Once that's done, we add some texturing with the handy dandy rolled ball of foil method, which I've seen on many different channels. RP Archive, Black Magic Craft, Nerdforge, Storycraft Society. Need I go on? No. Everybody uses this method because it seems the best way to do it. And for me, I like to measure out a grid on the dungeon tiles because it makes painting each individual square a lot easier and adds a little bit of detail and makes it easier for movement as well. So obviously draw out the grid, deepen the lines with the pencil, and you're good to go. Next stage was building the walls on the shorter piece. I opted for a shorter wall for these tiles compared to ones that I have done previously from a video that I saw by Storycraft Society, where they mention the shorter profile walls, you know, like this. If you can zoom in on that, you silly camera. Now, there are many different ways that you could build these shorter walls. You could just use a long thin piece of XPS foam and just glue it straight down, so you've got one solid piece, and then draw in your bricks. What I did, I used some of the spare offcuts of XPS foam that I've got, chopped them up into brick shapes, and then to give them a bit of texture, we've just got your standard freezer bag. We've got a couple of rocks, pieces of slate in there. Another idea that I borrowed from seeing on Nerdforge, and then after I discovered it on there, I saw that Black Magic Craft do it as well. So yeah, another one of those generic brick texturing ideas. So yeah, you got these stones in there, you've got your bricks, chuck them in, roll them around, shake it up a bit, and it all adds nice bits of texture to your now small bricks. To build up the wall, I used some watered down PVA. This made things a little bit difficult to handle because the bricks slipped and slid around a little bit. Now, after doing it this way, I decided that a tackier glue was a lot better. And for me, Gorilla Glue, wood glue, works perfectly because it's quite tacky. Dries fairly quickly, but when it is dry, it is completely solid. So yeah, we painted on the PVA, placed down the bricks according to shape, size and everything, and once the first layer was done, painted the top of those with more PVA, and then lined up another layer of bricks, and that was it. And then once that was dry, we could move on to the base coating and the painting. So what I use from watching Black Magic Craft and RP Archive I use a mix of either a really dark grey. At the moment this is craft paint, but it is Payne's grey mixed with some Mod Podge and some water, all of a kind of 1-to-1 rough consistency. Pop this bit of greaseproof down because I'm going to paint the underside as well, because sometimes they have a tendency to warp slightly, especially the larger tiles. So if I paint the underside, I'm hoping that won't be the case as much. Once the base coat, undercoat, whatever you want to call it, was dried, it was time to paint all the individual tiles. So for this, I just chose a random mix of colours. I made my own terracotta colour with a rough mix of 2-to-1 Vallejo game colour heavy red and Vallejo game colour orange fire. So yeah, it was roughly 2 red to 1 orange. And I also used Vallejo game colour leather brown and a surface primer that I have. Another Vallejo, funnily enough. German Panzer Grey. A little bit of water to thin them down to make the colours go a little bit longer. And you don't want to lose some of the detail that you got with the foil on the tiles as well. So thinning them down a little bit just helps with that. And then just paint random squares on the tiles until you've got it in a way that you're happy with. Once these were all dry, it looks a little bit like Technicolor checkerboard, but with all the extra effects that are going to come next, that gets turned down a little bit, so don't worry too much. So next up is the dry brush. So again, we used our surface primer, German Panzer Grey, with a mix of cold grey, game colour, all Vallejo, you might have noticed. I like Vallejo paints, what can I say? And that's a rough 1-to-1 mix. Get a good big terrain brush, dry it off as much as possible, and then just dry brush over the whole of the actual surface of the tiles. And then with the wall section all over the bricks as well. And then once that was dry, I just went over it again with just pure cold grey, another dry brush of that over the top. Now once all the dry brushing is done, it's time to wash it all down, darken it up a little bit, make it look proper grimy and dungeony. So we have a mix of 2 washes. We've got a black wash, a brown wash, and then water as well. Now the ratio I used to start with was 5 parts black wash to 3 parts brown wash to 5 parts water. When I did this originally, it turned out quite dark. So in the end, I changed up the ratio a little bit to a... I know it's random numbers, but it seemed to work quite nicely. So it ended up being a 3-part black wash, 3-part brown wash to 7 parts water. Have a mess, have a mix around yourselves, and get a wash that suits what you like and what your style is. This for me works. I'm quite happy with the end result, and once you see them at the end, I'll let you decide for yourselves. Painting is I think it's very personal, to be perfectly honest, and paint schemes can be a very personal thing. What one person likes isn't always the same for somebody else, so you pick and choose whichever style you like. This is just my technique for making some nice basic tiles. the basic way of crafting them, nice and simple, done in what, 15-20 minutes. Painting, entirely up to you. Go with whichever colour style you like. Now we just put the tiles aside, leave them to dry. At this point I went and made a few more. Now this is what I came up with in the end. Hope you like the final result. There we go. Look at that checkerboard pattern. As I say, muted down a lot. It's quite dark. And this is one of the other one, the wall part that was painted with the dark wash. Yeah, loses a lot of the colour with that one. And these ones, these are the ones that had the lighter wash. So as you can see, some of the colour still shows through quite nicely. And I also changed up and had a lighter grey painted onto the actual square parts of the tiles for these as well, and some of the bricks. I wanted another lighter grey in there as well, but yeah, as you can see, resilient. You can come up with whatever type of design you want, whether you want to make a corridor kind of effort. You can just do whatever you want with these, opening up into something else. But yeah, so it's entirely down to however you want to style them and what you want to make. This is the basics that will give you the ideas for wherever your creativity takes you. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you want to see more, because I have more stuff planned for future. Towers, streets, waters, all sorts. We'll see you next time. Laters.